Yeah.
Welcome to this week's bonus episode of the Curt and John Talk Tech and AI podcast, where we're gonna dive into one of my favorite people here. You may or may not be aware of it, but there was this guy named Dan Goldin, and he ran NASA for longer than anyone else ran NASA because it's not an easy job, right? And it just so happens that John helped me create an article about Dan Goldin, and it was called Celebrating Dan Goldin because the guy is kind of amazing. But John, you've been following and tuning in to Dan Goldin for longer, much longer than I have. I'm kind of a newbie at it. So, like, why don't you share with listeners how has he, improved your career, and why do you find value in following this guy? Like, what does he give you?
Oh yeah, for sure. First, everybody, thank you for being on the bonus episode here. Um, Dan Golden, man, yeah, I think I said in my quote. He was inspired by him. In the late '90s in high school when I was taking an obnoxious amount of science classes, and as I stumbled upon a lot of space exploration, that's where he came up, and I was deeply engrossed at that time. As I said, I first discovered him then. I mean, he was, again, like you said, the longest serving administrator. So as I continued and learned a lot and watched Neil Tyson deGrasse and other,
Right.
cosmos space explorers, Dan was always just at the pinnacle of everything that was getting involved at that time. So I was passionate about space and technology, of course, and I think that his revolutionary faster, better, cheaper is really what caught my attention.
Yep. Yep.
It defied that traditional bureaucracy, especially back then with the high budget mentality of like just pour money on it and we're going to make things happen.
Right. Yeah.
And it made space exploration feel more accessible and innovative because it wasn't just money driving it. It was, like, I think we can do this, and I think we can do it faster, and I think we can do
Well,
it
efficiency
cheaper.
is a fun game, right?
Yep.
Because it it's what gets the human race ahead. Quite
Yes.
honestly,
Well, especially when you're in breaking tech, like this is, you can't overthink it. You can't spend a lot of time in it, or you'll get paralyzed. You spend
that's true.
your
Yeah.
life study not seeing it come to life. That's not going to work.
Right.
And I think as a young tech enthusiast as I was then, seeing him push boundaries gave me that deep impression to drive for efficiency and results and everything I do that was in technology, especially in like when it came to tech innovation, and being part of amazing product development teams that shared those same values. So yeah, it's never really left me, and it seems to have guided me into the funnels that I've been in for at least the last 15 years of my life. I think it was always a hobby. I think I was just an enthusiast and very much loved space and space travel. And I think now I'm in a different place where in the last 10, 15 years, I've been at the forefront of technology. And that doesn't mean just a gadget that makes blending in your kitchen better.
Right. Right.
It's everything. So yeah, and I think he's a pioneer of that time, especially I think in AI and neuroscience. And I think, that's something really deep for me as I'm in the brain work, as I'm thinking about the ways that we not only challenge our brain, unlock new areas of the brain, but also just even neural pathways and neural connectivity. I saw that shift when he went to New Edge. So it just continued along the progression of the same things I was studying, neuroscience, which was also innovation.
You're like more of the good stuff. Keep it going,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, and it's dedication to cognitive, which I've even if you've been following me last week, I've been deep into cognitive with
You
athletics.
have been. Yes, you
In the
have been.
UFC headquarters for the last two times in the last week, and talking with some of the greats and what they found, and some of the ones, especially the older guys. Is this cognitive health decline? They found getting knocked around the head a few times
Hmm.
doesn't exactly help with brain health, and
Right. Unfortunately, yeah.
well, there's that, and also the cognitive response and things, right? So those fighters, they have to be on edge, and they got to know when to throw the punch, and they got to know when to not throw the punch, and when it looks like a fake. And I think that science is meeting that industry very, very interestingly. They have all kinds of really cool toys and gadgets and data systems in there that
Oh
are
yeah.
not like the old Rockies movie with a guy with a towel around his shoulder just yelling in your face as he's holding the bat.
Yeah.
It still happens. Don't
That's
get me
good.
wrong. You walk into their gym, there's still that going on because that's
Right.
you know,
That's
that's
good. Yeah,
it's
that's good.
fundamental to that sport. But they can also step in this cool little digital thing with some glasses and throw punches and see analytics and results and how fast that swing and how fast the response is to light. And it's all cognitive stuff. It's cognitive health. And I think anybody that maybe has a grandparent that is either passed or is struggling with Alzheimer's or any degenerative diseases, this is real, and I think a lot of it is inflation in the brain. And so seeing that neuroscience come to life,
Hmm.
him being in that was really inspirational for me. And then also the neural computing, which I think is the foundation of AI today. That's where those big changes in space and technology are coming together and redefining our ability and our understanding. It's when they say that you only use a very small percentage of our brain, really, it's like what other secrets are back there? What are the things that we not unlocked yet?
Right.
And I think that that science and Goldin's journey during that past NASA was digging into that and trying to open those doors. And then now, I think now just in his later years, what he's like,
He's
maybe
84.
80, okay, he's just about his mid 80s, 84, and
He's 84. To give some perspective for listeners,
yeah,
he was the ninth chief administrator of NASA, and chief
wow,
administrator is what a publicly traded company would call CEO. Okay, so he was the guy in charge, and he was there from 92 through the end of 2001. So,
yeah,
and it just so happens that that is the longest that anyone has served as chief administrator of NASA.
yeah,
So he really does kind of provide, like, I put a lot of value on his posts and his words because I feel like he gives me a perspective that I don't get from anyone else. Like, there's no other human on earth out of 330 million Americans. He is the only one who can give me this very unique perspective. And so I put value on it because, like you, I care about space travel, right? Like, I think it's an imperative. And I use that word carefully, imperative. I think it is truly an imperative. And when you think about how he has contributed to that goal, like, holy crap, right? Like,
yeah,
this guy's amazing.
yeah.
He is amazing, and he had the guts and the resiliency to tell the whole federal government, the whole system, we're going to change up how we do this, and here's how we're going to do it. Because that's, politically speaking, like, they will chop you off at the knees, right? So the fact that he survived that 9 years is really the proof in the pudding, in my opinion. It is the fact that, no, he made it work,
Yeah.
because they would not have allowed him to do that job for a decade if he had not been effective in doing so. So
Well, yeah.
he really changed how it works, and I think that SpaceX and Rocket Lab and Blue Origin and all these guys we've talked about in the past on this podcast, I think they all owe him a debt of gratitude.
100%. Everything that his story is very relevant to today's leaders and innovators. You mentioned some of these big tech companies, and I have somebody that watched that tech industry shift and expand over the years. I'd like to say that there's a certain generation that was involved in I think the breakthrough of just building these foundational blocks of this technology, and then I think there's a generation, which is my generation, that has taken those fundamental blocks and turned it into something that it is today. I think that his story reinforces the value of being adaptable, like very curious and unafraid to pivot. Like he had this never surrender attitude that
Yes, very much.
like remained throughout his whole career, and on top of that with the grit, it just I like I said, I very much understand the uphill battle of bureaucracy in companies and or just in politics of the world and society. I am a a man of ethnicity. Is that right? Although I'm an American,
Ethnicity, yeah,
yeah, I'm
that's
an
that's
American,
that's a
but I
that's a real thing.
definitely have to check the box sometimes on being Hispanic, and I definitely came from inner city, and so I have all of these.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? I have these conversations of it.
What, you're Hispanic?
Oh, totally.
I've been
And
doing this podcast with a Hispanic dude this whole time. Holy crap!
our
What
whole
is going on?
demographic just changed now.
Oh my God, you sounded so white. I'm gonna have to edit that out. That's
Listen,
terrible. I
yeah,
can't
they
do that.
probably can't
Yeah,
do that one. But
but anyway,
pushing
uh,
through adversity, at least in that one that you're going to edit out. No, I'm saying, but pushing through that adversity, you have to become adaptable, but you also continue to push your own. I don't want to say your own agenda because that one's like terrible, right? It's like you push your own belief.
yeah, yeah.
You don't waver from what you truly believe in or what you're.
Echo chambers
Yeah.
again, right?
Uh,
Yeah, like what not to sound all hippy dippy, even though I really don't like that phrase. I'm looking for a replacement. So if you've got one, please suggest it.
sure.
DM me now and get an extra subscription for free. But but yeah, I mean, how do you embrace the best interests of all humans,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And isn't that kind of what it's all about? And I know some people don't give a damn about that. They just are like, who cares? You are not my responsibility. I get it. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But what if you don't feel that way? What if you feel an obligation to embrace the best interests of all humans?
What if?
Yeah, what if? How does that go? How does that stuff go?
I think it's right for the experience. I think that hopefully that's the shift that we get to see as the outcomes of our latest events in the election and just overall the latest breakthroughs in AI and tech. I think people fear this conversation about going to space often, and I think when I
Oh, it's very controversial. I
yeah
was, like we were talking recently about, and I said I grew up on NASA and I love space exploration. I love science fiction, but that's just me,
yeah
right? And once I started kind of paying attention to space travel and SpaceX and Blue Origin and Rocket Lab and NASA and everything that's going on, I realized that space travel is controversial, and like at least a third of Americans think it's bullshit and are pissed off that their tax dollars are going to fund it.
yeah.
I mean, does that sound? Am I being a bloviated idiot when I say that? It's not every. I love it. You love it, but not everybody loves it, right? Like some people hate it.
Well, they hate it. They do. They definitely do. Like as if they didn't agree to it, or and a lot of times,
Yeah.
I guess like I also find they don't really understand it. They don't understand actually where that money is going and how it's going.
Well, it's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah,
So
because they do some intense science up there, and they get into zero G or whatever physical environment they're looking for that they're afforded when they're orbiting the Earth and not down here on the ground. And like I wish I had time to keep up with all of that, right? Because it's pretty amazing because like we think this is reality. This
yeah.
is the way corn grows, right? We stick it in the ground and it comes up and the sun does this and chlorophyll and blah blah. But like yeah, and just take it a couple miles up into this zero G environment above the earth and guess what? It works totally differently. So what we thought was the normal, right? Which may okay, maybe it is normal. Uh you you don't have to go very far outside that zone and suddenly it's very different,
Yeah.
and that's quite mind-blowing, right? Like that brings us back to what we talked about in the main episode with using AI to summarize and filter the Niagara Falls of information, because holy cow, you're crushing my brain, right? like
Mm-hmm.
like I need to summarize all this information that you're giving me, because I'm not up on all the latest studies on the ISS,
Right.
like I and here I call myself a space exploration lover, right? But I don't even know what's going on with all that stuff. There's some third grader in Wyoming who's got a plant growing on the ISS, and I feel a little guilty about not knowing about that.
Well, truly, who has time for it sometimes? And I don't say that in like a weird way. I say it almost in the way of like, to get into those depths of where all of this money really gets spent or how it gets appropriated is a lot of time. It's a lot of yeah, you got to
It is, yeah.
follow a lot of information. I think, and I think, but yeah, there are tax dollars going towards place exploration. I do believe that a lot of that scientific research, though, is justified. It's justified by the technological advancements and as well as the economic belief or benefits that it brings. And if you can believe in that, you're at least halfway there. And if you wanted to go further to see how that money's being spent, then you would go and chase down how and where that's being happening. Like, at the end of the day, it's giving jobs. There's definitely developing of new materials that get applied to other stuff. I mean, how many times have you heard like this thing was used to strengthen the outer shell of the space shuttle, during reentry, and it's like, but it's also like a liner that's in your hot device inside your home that
Right, right,
heat. So it's like the pushing the envelope of those harsh environments and stuff also has its application and benefits here on the big ball as well. And so, and medical technologies, right? Like we got to look at in those harsh environments, what are certain medical advancements that we can make to ensure that our astronauts come home safely, and
right.
or yeah, and so there's just all these things that also come that get birthed from those research, that technological advancement. I think that's what's justified it. But you're right. If you want to go down the rabbit hole, you got to divert some serious time. You gotta follow some people. You gotta follow some news. You gotta look at some
Yeah.
bills with a little bit more scrutiny. You gotta, and if you don't like it, there's always the good old American way. You can go lobby. You can go picket, and you can get a petition. You can do a lot of stuff. If you really want to go further, but to sit down on the sidelines and just complain about it, that just doesn't work. Like it's just not. And like I said, and bring it back to Dan, I think he's not been ever a person that has came across to me like of being fearful of any of those things. He just pushes past it, keeps going, made big impact, and now I'm so thankful that he's still kicking and giving out great words and sharing great wisdoms, because I believe if you're truly in the tech industry and you're truly around innovation, I would hope that he's on your follow list of people to just continue to gain the wealth of his knowledge while he's here kicking it with us on this earth.
He's kind of ageless, quite honestly,
Hmm.
because he's out there and he does a lot more public speaking than I do. Um, he gets out there and he inspires people. And I see him on LinkedIn. I'm like, you're a successful dude. But he will grab onto the posts of junior players,
Yeah,
people in their 20s and 30s just starting out, but they feel his vibe and they like what he's saying, and he will promote them. He will love their posts. He will comment positively, and like that. I think that's what hooked me. The fact that he was humble enough to he wasn't just kissing the ass of those above him. Like he didn't really care where you came from, but he just wants to see that you're embracing that positive spirit, because he's definitely the epitome of that positive spirit. If you're feeling depressed, listeners, get on LinkedIn, get on X, follow Dan Goldin, and I don't know. I can't predict how your brain is going to react, but personally, I found a lot of inspiration and optimism and positivity in what he was saying, and so maybe you will too. That's all I can say. Maybe you will too.
I know. I like watching him engage on LinkedIn. You called it out that my posts have been engaged with, and I sometimes I was like, oh, that's the. I'm so humble. I'm like, oh, that's the algorithm. Oh, that's just whoever his
Well, right, right, and
is or what.
sorry, yes, sorry to interrupt, but like he liked one of my posts on LinkedIn, and I was like, just by the glory of God, did I notice the because you get a lot of activity on social media. It's hard to keep up,
Uh-huh.
and so I could have easily just ignored it and not have seen it whatsoever. And I was like, Dan Gold, who is this guy? NASA. And then like I went down the rabbit hole and was like, oh my God, he's like a rock star, right?
Total
But
rockstar.
when I found out that he's been liking your stuff for a long time, that's when it became the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. That's when my life got weird.
Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
was weird. I mean, again, seeing him on my post was like it made me feel like this like figure from my like teen years became like a real world connection and like mentor in my circle of things because that's pretty. I thought it was pretty big, and it's been consistent. He's pretty consistent and always a constant source of inspiration and wisdom. So like his posts are always like an ongoing reminder of grit and adaptability and pushing forward. And so you're right on that somebody could just not be having a good day or feeling like they're not making progress and jump on his feed and you'll see some really
Yeah.
good stuff to pick you up.
Yeah. Very inspiring. Highly recommended for listeners. And you don't really have to be a space junkie to benefit from what he talks about because it's really not about space exploration. It's about resilience.
Mm-hmm.
It's about integrity. You and I have talked about this in the past. It's about dealing with adversity.
Yeah.
And I see Dan Goldin as a person who is like, a comfortable life is not a good thing.
Right.
That adversity and challenges. I think of the pioneers. I think of my great grandparents who were pioneers coming across the United States and the challenges that they had and how that made them very strong people, in my opinion. Now, I'm a little biased because they're my ancestors, but you know, I say it in my article on LinkedIn that Dan Goldin reminds me of my grandparents, but it has nothing to do with his age and everything to do with his core values.
Right.
And he's very much kind of one of those World War II Depression era people who realizes that when life kicks you a few curveballs, that can actually be kind of a good thing. Like like you can really benefit from that. You might not like it. You might, well, of course not. You're not going to like it, duh. But like it can really help you become a more efficient player, so to speak. You know. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, that's what I like about it. I mean, I love space and I love NASA, but and that's what attracted me to Dan Goldin. But then when I started tuning in, I was like, oh, this has nothing to do with NASA and everything to do with like, what did you say? Grit? Yeah, grit. John Wayne. Thank you, John Wayne. Thank you, sir. Kicked cancer 3 times. You're a god. Yeah, you're a good guy.
Yep.
Um, like, yeah, grit. So anyway, Dan Goldin, grit, NASA, space exploration. You like it or you don't like it. If you're listening to us, if you don't like it and you're listening to us, I do have to question your sanity because we're kind of fanboys here. So
For sure. Yeah. No. Total fanboy. Check out Dan. He'll pick you up when you're down. His whole story will inspire you. And if you're total tech and AI nerds, you can look into his past track history of just crazy innovations and being part of some really exciting sectors of tech. And I don't know, man. There's just nothing not to like about the guy.
that kind of becomes a hobby because the guy's prolific, and you're like, but he's 84. It's like I don't care.
Yeah.
He does more than most 35-year-olds I know. So
Mm-hmm.
there you go, peeps. I do want to wrap up this bonus episode by reading your kind contribution to the Dan Goldin article.
Oh, thanks.
It's in the section John Bailey weighs in. I thought it made the article whole, and I really thought it was great. But anyway, here's what John said. I first discovered Dan Goldin in the late 90s when I was in high school. He served as NASA administrator during a period when I was deeply engrossed in studying space exploration. Later, he reappeared on my radar with Intellisys Corporation, which became New Edge. And as someone fascinated by neuroscience and computing, I couldn't resist his work. When I started following him on LinkedIn, I realized we spoke the same language. His passion for deep tech and pushing boundaries really resonates with me. if you consider yourself a quote unquote techie of any sort and are not following Dan, you're missing out on some of the most valuable insight from someone who has truly been at the forefront of innovation. So,
Thank you for that.
yeah, no, and that because well, when I learned that you had such a history with Dan, which I do not have, I have an adoration of the man, but I don't have a history with him. I was like, it was this rare opportunity that only happens a couple times in life, quite honestly, where someone close to you is close to something you're not close to,
Mm.
if that makes sense,
Yeah, for sure.
right? And I was like, oh my God, you know everything about this man who has suddenly captured my attention. And he's obviously got a lot of people pulling on his coattails, right? He's got everybody wanting him to come speak for free, I'm sure, and hopefully a few people willing to pay him for it because it's worth it. So the message to the listeners is check out Dan Goldin. Yeah, if you agree with our core values here of space exploration and technology and biz tech and just trying to improve the human race. And I realize not everybody's on board with all that, right? But if that's where you fall, back to John's point, if you're not following Dan Goldin, you're kind of missing out. I think you're kind of missing out, maybe.
Missing out for sure, and hopefully you heard this and you take a next, jump into that. And if not, I don't know. Let's have an actionable item. Like, to me, that's a mentor, and it's not one I know personally, but I know of him and follow for a long time. But like, I'd like to hear if it's in the comments of or one of our posts on social or on the where you on a review, maybe just talk about what mentors you might have, or maybe somebody you don't know that inspired you. Maybe we'll get on track with them. I don't profess to know everybody, that's for sure. And
Exactly.
as you said, you found that I knew, I've been following more and know more than you did. So I think it's good to share those knowledges and share our mentors and the people that inspire us most. It helps us all grow. So good stuff.
Yeah, I would totally agree. When I discovered Dan Goldin, I was like, oh my God, this guy's been around forever. And I felt like an idiot for just having discovered him. I felt really deficient, right?
Yeah.
And so I think to your point, John, how many other Dan Goldins are out there?
Yep. For sure.
Let's maybe that's one use of AI and summarizing the Niagara Falls of information that we get every day is maybe AI can help us find people like Dan Goldin, people who resonate with your core values and people who you want to support and learn from. Because that's the number one thing that I do with Dan Goldin is I learn from the guy.
Yeah. Right. Uh,
Yep.
and we got to learn from, and we all get to learn from each other. And there's definitely Dan Goldens out there, I'm sure. So might use that query to see if we got other people out there that we're just not paying attention to right now. Maybe come back.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a big world, man. It's a big world. Well, Mr. John Bailey from the Mindset Genesis in Las Vegas, thank you for coming by today. I think we've created a couple of good episodes, and if listeners leave with nothing more than an awareness of Dan Goldin, I'm a happy guy.
Same here. Absolutely.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, John. Thanks for coming by. We'll do it again next week, right? We do it every week.
Yep. Can't wait to jump into it next week. Have a great one, Curt.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye bye.